What's up? How we doing? I love that. I love that false ending. I was watching to make sure I didn't talk over it like Myron. Hey, so I brought some friends up here with me today. Can we give it up for friends? We're doing a series on dating. It's his and hers, and we've talked about some pretty fun, pretty spicy, pretty interesting topics on the topic of romance and dating. And so tonight, I want to introduce what I have to say with a little game. And so I brought these friends up here. We've got Malachi and we've got Jacob, a.k.a. Huff, as our contestants, and we've got Taylor and Shannon as their coaches. All right? So are you guys ready to compete? Are you ready to... Malachi is so ready. Okay. Jacob is so ready too. So here's what the goal is. This is real simple, guys. All right, listen up. So your goal is to grab when I say go, not before, you can't cheat. When I say go, your goal is to grab the right object out of the basket. We got a basket in front of each of them right here. Your goal is to grab the right object out of the basket as fast as you can, okay? Without hurting yourself or anyone else. So grab the right object out of the basket as fast as you can. Now, Taylor and Shannon's jobs, they're coaches. And so when I say to, they're going to give them a little piece of advice, and then we're going to have 2 rounds. And they're going to give them a piece of advice before each round. So does that sound good? You guys good? You know what we're doing? Audience, you know what we're doing? Now, one more thing I got to tell you guys. Taylor and Shannon are going to show you a sign of what their contestant is supposed to get out of the basket, but don't say it. Don't read it to them because they're only allowed to know what their coach tells them, all right? And so that's what we're going to do. So guys, if you want to step up to your basket, and like I said, you need to face away from it to begin with. So, yeah, just like that. That's good. All right, coaches, you can come and give them your piece of advice for this first round. Okay, they're done telling you. Jacob, are you ready? Okay, Jacob's ready. Malachi, are you ready? I think so. He thinks so. He's not so sure. Okay, so you're going to jump around and try to find it, okay? On go. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go! Wow. You got to pick? Did you get something? Wow, that's really exciting. That's a really exciting thing. Okay, let's wait for... All right, good for you. Okay, coaches, are you guys showing them what they're supposed to get? Okay, show the audience what they're supposed to get. All right, Jacob, audience, what did Jacob get? What is it? A little yellow ball. Is that what he's supposed to get? All right, yeah, Jacob, good job. All right, Jacob, tell us, how did you get that right? How did you get the right thing out of the basket?
She said reach in the basket and grab a small yellow Nerf ball.
Right, that was pretty clear. So would you say, is this thing working? Okay. Would you say that you knew what you were looking for?
Yes.
Yeah, you said you knew you were looking for. Okay, audience, I got a question. Did Malachi get the right... Did Malachi get the right thing? Okay. All right. This didn't work out so well. So let's try this game again. We're going to go 3 rounds just to help you guys out. So, you guys coaches, you just make it up as you want, and we're going to try again, okay? So coaches, give them another piece of advice. Taylor, you can give them the same piece of advice. Okay. All right. Yeah. Now would be good. Yeah. So Malachi cheated in the first round. I was wondering when the probabilities would weigh not in my favor. All right. Are we good? You guys ready? You know what you're supposed to get out of the bucket? Okay. 3, 2, 1, go. This is so exciting. All right. Okay. We got something. Jacob. All right, very good. Good job. Proud of you. All right, show them what you got, Jacob. What'd you get? Okay, you got a cross. Now, is that what he was supposed to get, audience? All right. Okay, so Jacob, how did you get the right thing a second time in a row?
She told me reach in the basket and grab a cross.
Wow. So again, would you say you knew what you were looking for?
Yeah, I knew what I was looking for.
Wow, that's really cool. That's really cool. All right, team, did Malachi get the right item? Boo. Malachi, what was he supposed to get? He was supposed to get Gorilla Tape, and he got a burlap flower. Malachi, why did you grab a burlap flower instead of Gorilla Tape?
Because it looked cool.
Because it looked cool. Well, did your coach have anything to say about it?
No.
No. So you didn't know what you were getting. Would you say that you didn't know what you were looking for?
I didn't know.
You didn't know what you were looking for. Okay. All right. Thank you. Put those back. We're going to do a bonus round. And we're going to have to make something up on the spot here, but it's okay. So the coaches aren't going to have a sign for this one, but coaches, go ahead and pick an item and give them a clue. All right. Yeah. I don't know what that was. All right. Are you guys ready? You understood what your coach said to you? Whether you understood what it meant or not doesn't matter. All right. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Wow. You gotta get something. You're threatened? All right. That is a no button. Okay. All right. Let's bring Shannon into the game here. Shannon, what was Jacob supposed to get?
The net.
He was supposed to get a net. What did he get? Wow, he's so good. Tell us one more time. How did you get the net?
Well, believe it or not, she just told me to reach into the basket, grab a net.
Wow. So you knew what you were looking for. All right, Malachi. Okay, wait, Taylor, what was Malachi supposed to get out of the basket?
I told him if he got anything out of the basket, I would kill him.
Oh. So he disobeyed direct orders. All right, so Malachi, I don't know, you didn't get the right thing because there was nothing for you to get. So you definitely got some bad advice, though. Yes. Okay, we can take that. All right, thank you guys. That's the end of our game. Appreciate our contestants for putting up with the ridiculousness. You guys can take a seat. And thank you, coaches, for participating. So what does this game illustrate to us? Why did we do this silly game? I think that what this game illustrates to us is two mistakes that most people make when it comes to the topic of dating. This game demonstrated two things that go wrong, and usually they come from bad coaching, right? And those mistakes are that we either don't know what we're looking for, or we're looking for the wrong thing. Now, Malachi got lucky, but he didn't know what he was looking for, and generally he was looking for the wrong thing. And that was a result of very, very bad coaching on Taylor's part, whereas Jacob got the right thing every time. Why? Because every single time he knew what he was looking for. And so that applies to dating, because tonight I want to talk about 3 qualities to look for in a wife. And so, gentlemen, this message is going to be more directed at the guys tonight, because 3 qualities of what to look for in a wife. But ladies, don't tune out on me. Please stick around. Don't get up and leave, because we have a principle here at The Way that we believe in. And what we believe when it comes to marriage, when it comes to relationships, is you want to become the person that the person you're looking for is looking for. See if you can puzzle that one out. Let's try that again. So if you're a lady in the crowd tonight, if you're a woman, you want to become the woman that the man you're looking for is looking for. So I want you guys to hear me out tonight. I want you to hear what I have to say and maybe consider it from that point of view. As maybe, am I the woman that the man I'm looking for is looking for? So this is not just a message for the guys, although it's going to be generally directed at the guys. Now, you may hear me say wife, and you may be like, wife? I'm just looking for a date, man. Like, I'm not looking for a wife. We're not there yet. But here's my argument that I'd like to make is if you're a follower of Jesus, if you claim to believe in and submit your life to him, then the romantic relationship that you were created for is not a dating relationship. It's a marriage. Or it's singleness. But we're talking about the topic of marriage tonight. So the romantic relationship you were created for, that God created, was marriage. And so because of that, we don't see the topic of dating in the Bible. Dating is only like 100 years old. The Bible is at its youngest about 2,000 years old. And so the topic of dating doesn't come up in the Bible. But when we believe that dating is an interview process for a candidate for marriage, when you're looking for someone to fit the job description of husband or of wife, an eventual father or mother, then we believe we can look at the Bible to get some really good coaching, like what Shannon had to offer, on what we're looking for in a wife. And so we're going to look at the Bible tonight for these 3 qualities to look for in a wife. Now, whenever we are looking for the wrong thing, it ends in a romantic tragedy. And this is something our culture is obsessed with, from movies like Titanic or La La Land to, sorry to throw her under the bus again, but Taylor Swift. And look, I love her, okay? It's not no hate. But bad coaching, like if she's got a long list of ex-lovers and they'll all tell you she's insane, you shouldn't date her, okay? So let's just hit the pause button on that. But we love a romantic tragedy. And so we're going to look at a romantic tragedy in the Bible that really is more of a romantic train wreck. And we're going to find this romantic train wreck through the story of Sampson. And Samson's found in the book of Judges. It's in the Old Testament, so it's in the first section of the Bible. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. Judges is one of the weirdest books in the Bible, and it's in a really weird time in Israelite history. And it's in the Old Testament, which is a much harder cultural time period for us to understand. So we're going to run across some really strange stuff in this story. It's a pretty crazy story, but I think God still has something great to teach us out of it. And so we're going to look at Samson in the book of Judges, chapters 13 through 16. And to introduce us, I'm going to give you a little bit of background on Samson before we jump into his story. Samson was a miracle baby. His mother was barren. She was not able to have children until an angel of God came to her and said, hey, I'm going to give you a son, and he's going to be blessed by God. Well, not I'm going to give you a son. God's going to give you a son, and he's going to be blessed by God. And doesn't that, it sounds like Mary, right? Mary and Joseph and the virgin birth of Jesus. But Samson, he's got some similarities to Jesus, but he's not quite like Jesus. And but that's what we see, is that he's a miracle child. And the angel also told his mother and father that, hey, he is to be dedicated to God. And so they actually raise him up as a Nazirite, which is kind of a strange concept, but it was usually a vow that an adult would take that was a vow of total dedication to God. And what they would promise to do is they would promise not to cut their hair, they would promise not to touch any alcohol, and they would promise not to touch any dead bodies. Now, I don't know that that's a big temptation for a lot of us, but still, that's what makes up the Nazirite vow. And so Samson was raised from childhood, from birth, as a Nazirite, a child dedicated to God, and that was his purpose, and that was his blessing, and he was blessed by God. And when he became an adult, he was the leader of Israel. He was one of the judges, and they were the leaders of Israel at this time period. And it actually says that he judged or led Israel for 20 years. And what you probably know about Samson, the most unique and distinctive feature about him is that he was incredibly strong. Think Superman, Hulk, or Hercules, right? Like, he was incredibly strong, and that's probably what you already know about him. But just like Superman, Samson had a kryptonite. Samson's kryptonite, his weakness, was for, you guessed it, the ladies. Yes, Samson, just to be clear, Samson liked to do the sex, okay? That's his problem. That's his weakness. But so we're going to dive in. We're going to dive in Judges chapter 14 to Samson's story, and we're going to see how his choices led to a romantic tragedy that was a train wreck, and how we can pull from this story 3 qualities to look for in a wife. And so we're going to pick up in not Samson, but Judges chapter 14, verse 1, and it starts like this. Samson went down to Timnah, that's a town. He went down to Timnah and saw there a young Philistine woman. Now, what is a Philistine? I don't know if you're familiar with that word or with that title. The Philistines were another nation that was warring with the nation of Israel to occupy the land that was called the Promised Land, that we now know as the country of Israel. The Philistines were an enemy of God's people, the nation of Israel, making them an enemy at the time of God. And they were a seafaring people, so they sailed, and they were taking over port cities and where rivers would tie into the Mediterranean Sea. And so they were vying and fighting with the Israelites for occupation of this land and of the trade routes within it. So these were the great enemy of the Israelites at this time, were the Philistines. And so that's what Samson went into, the area where the Philistines occupied, and saw there a young Philistine woman. And when he returned, he said to his father and mother, I have seen a Philistine woman in Timnah. Now, get her for me as my wife. Now, I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but maybe you came to the weigh one night and you went home and you were like, I saw a girl at the weigh tonight. Mother, father, go get her for me and make her my wife. I don't know. I just feel like that comes off kind of weird. But so he tells them this, and he tells them, hey, go get this woman for me. And they respond, and we see a little bit of good parenting here because they respond by saying this. Isn't there an acceptable woman among your relatives? I'm just gonna breeze right by that. Or among all our people. Okay, among our people. That is among the Israelites, among the country and the people that he grew up amongst. Must you go to the uncircumcised Philistines to get a wife? Must you go outside of God's people to find a wife? But Samson said to his father, get her for me. She's the right one for me. So Samson was stubborn. He was unwilling and uninterested in listening to the wisdom of his parents. And he said, no. I know what's best for me. I don't care what you have to say. I say go get her for me. Go get her for me. And so then we see a bad bit of parenting here because Samson's parents go, okay, honey, we'll go get her for you. And so they go down. So Samson and his mother and father, they go down to Timnah to find this girl. Now, this poor lady doesn't get a name. She's talked about for a whole chapter, and she doesn't get a name. So I'm going to call her Karen. And Karen's in Timnah. Samson and his parents go down, and they find her, and Samson's like, yeah, I like her. And so whatever conspires, they get arranged to be married. So they are essentially engaged. Now, let's pause the story right there because we've already run across the first quality to look for that I would say we should look for when we're looking for a wife. And that was found in his parents' wisdom to him, and that's simply this. Is she a follower of Jesus? She should be, or the quality that you're looking for in a wife is that she is a follower of Jesus. See, Samson's parents asked him, do you have to go outside of God's body of believers, outside of his chosen people, the Israelites, to find a wife? Can't you find someone from within the Israelites? And in the same way, and what we're going to see is that Samson's choice of wife here leads to an absolute train wreck. And we're about to see that as we follow the story along. But the advice that I think we can pull from this is when you're looking for a spouse, when you're looking at asking someone out on a date, look within the body of believers. Look for somebody else. If you claim to follow Jesus, you claim that he's your Lord and you submit your life to him, then look for someone else who claims for the same thing. Look for a woman who says, I'm a follower of Jesus. Why? Because the Bible says not to be yoked to an unbeliever. This is wisdom from Paul, who wrote most of the New Testament. Most of what we often study in the Bible was written by Paul. He was the greatest Christian missionary, most impactful Christian missionary of all time, and he's coached millions, if not billions, of Christians throughout the 2,000 years since he left his letters for us in the Bible. And he said, don't be yoked to an unbeliever. What is a yoke? A yoke is a big wood beam that's shaped to sit over the shoulders of two oxen to bind them together as they're pulling a plow and farming a field. And if they were unequally yoked, one was stronger than the other, and one was weaker, or one was bigger, and one was smaller, it would make the task incredibly difficult, and the field might not be plowed very effectively. And that's the imagery that he's giving us when it comes to finding a mate, is don't be unequally yoked, because you need to be pulling in the same direction, following after Jesus, and you're going to be tied together, and it can either go really poorly for you or it can go really well for you. So choose not to be unequally yoked, because when you are, it's just harder. See, your faith in Jesus, if you claim to follow him, it guides, and you claim that he's the authority over your life, then your faith in Jesus guides every decision that you make. It guides every action that you take. It's going to guide the way that you work or go to school, the choices that you make there, what drives you to perform, to study well, to perform and get good grades, or to be a great worker. It guides you when you're faced with the opportunity to cheat on that test or to fudge some numbers at work, to do something unethical. Your faith in Jesus is going to inform the situations you face there. It's going to inform how you manage money, whether you're going to be generous with it or whether you're going to be greedy with it, whether you're going to spend it on things that are building a good future or bringing glory to God, or whether you're going to indulge in your own gratification. It's going to inform the way you manage a relationship, a romantic relationship. It's going to inform what kind of entertainment you look for. And in the future, not something we think about often when we're evaluating someone to ask them out, it's going to highly impact how you raise your kids. And if you've got somebody who doesn't believe the same things as you, who's not on the same page with you, who isn't led by the same guiding principles, it's going to be incredibly hard because you're going to have to continually work to find common ground over and over again. But when you are both following Jesus, you're both going to turn to God in prayer, and you're both going to turn to his word, the Bible, for wisdom and guidance in those decisions. And even better, you're both finding identity in someone who can actually give you identity. Whereas often a mistake made in dating and in marriage is that we look for identity in our partner, and that's something no human shoulders can carry. And so how do you know that she's a follower of Jesus? Not just by words or cool t-shirts or hashtags or Instagram bios, but how do you know that she's actually following after him? And Jesus tells us in Matthew chapter 7 that you'll know a tree by its fruit. You know that it's an apple tree because there's apples on it. You know that it's a fig tree because there's figs on it. You'll know that someone is a follower after Jesus because of the fruit that they bear, the spiritual fruit that they bear in their lives. And that's listed for us, and it's not an exclusive list, but we see the fruit of the Spirit listed in Galatians chapter 5, and that's those ones are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control. Galatians 5. So when you're evaluating this woman, as is she someone that I should date? Does she have potential as a wife? How does she love? How can you tell how she loves? You're not in love with her yet. Well, what are her friendships like? Does she have deep, lasting friendships? Or does her past contain the collateral relationship damage of poor friendships and betrayal, gossip, not getting along, so on and so forth? How does she treat her friends now? Or what about if you want to know if she's patient? How do you find out if she's patient? Well, how does she hold her temper? How does she react when things don't go the way she wants them to? Or faithfulness. How is she managing her sexuality, her sexual purity right now? And just to be clear, I'm not asking what does her past have in it, because Jesus can redeem any past. But it's, hey, look at her present. Is she living her life according to the sexual purity that God has called her to? Is she bearing that fruit of the Spirit? And so the first quality we're looking for in a wife is that she is a follower of Jesus. And so going on in Samson's story, continuing on this tragedy of Karen and her involvement in Samson's life, is that Samson and her are engaged to be married, and so she's a Philistine. And so the Philistines, like part of this whole tradition, Samson's throwing a feast to celebrate them getting ready to be married, and he's assigned 30 companions. So they're like groomsmen. Like basically he's got 30 Philistine groomsmen. And Samson, I think, that indicates that this type of feast that they have, studies of these words and of the culture would say that in Philistine culture, it was a massive drinking party. All right. So Samson and these guys are probably drunk, which just pointing out that he broke one of his Nazirite vows, if that's the case. He broke that vow not to touch any alcohol. But he's got these guys around him, and he's feeling cocky. He's feeling pretty proud, and he thinks he's smart. And so he's like, hey, guys, bros, I guess. I got a riddle for you, and I don't think you can solve it. Pretty cool dude, huh? And so he's like, you know what? I'm so confident. I bet you that you can't solve it. I bet you guys that if you can solve this riddle, I have to give each one of you, wait for it, a new outfit. Okay, if you can solve my riddle, I have to give every one of the 30 of you a new outfit. But if you can't solve it, you have to give me 30 new outfits. That's right. That's right. And so they're like, yeah, we'll take your bet. We're smart. We can figure out your riddle. And so they go through 3 days and they puzzle and they can't figure out his riddle. And so they get a little bit upset about it. And so they go to Karen and they're like, Karen, you listen to me. They're like, you find out from your fiance what the answer to this riddle is and you tell us, or else we're going to burn down your father's house with you and everyone you love inside it. Which feels like a little bit of an unnecessary escalation of this bet. But that's what they do. I'm not making it up. It's right here. It's in this text. So they threaten Karen with burning her and everyone she loves alive. And so she responds with fear. And she's like, okay, I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it. Don't hurt us, So she responds and she goes to Samson and she decides to manipulate him into giving her this answer. And so she plays the oldest card in the book and she goes to Samson and she's like, why don't you love me? You told everybody else this riddle, but you haven't even told me the answer to it. And he's like, Samson responds with the worst answer. Guys, take note. The worst answer you could ever give to your fiance. I haven't even told my mom and dad the answer to this riddle yet. Why would I tell you? Not a good answer. Not a good answer. And so she responds and she's like, oh, so you don't trust me. I see how it is. You don't trust me with the answer to your riddle, which ironically, he shouldn't trust her with the answer to his riddle. But the Bible goes on and it says that she cried for 7 days. And Samson finally just reached a point where he had enough. And he's like, fine, I'll tell you. I'll tell you the answer to the riddle. So he tells her the answer to the riddle. And she goes immediately to these 30 other men. She tells them the answer. And on the expiration date of their bet, they go to Samson and they're like, we figured out your riddle. And Samson gets a little bit upset. He gets a little bit salty. And he has another just great quote. He says to them in anger, he says, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would have not solved my riddle. Guys, a heifer is a cow, okay? So you could call her Sugar Bear, you can call her Honey Pumpkin, you could call her Boo. Just don't call her a heifer, okay? Don't call her your heifer. Not cool. Good coaching, life lessons from Samson. And so Samson continues on this rage fit, and he's lost the bet. He owes these guys 30 different outfits, so he goes and kills 30 Philistine men, takes their outfits, and gives them to his 30 guys. Seems like a reasonable response to this whole situation. And so this tragedy / train wreck continues. Karen's dad thinks that Samson's probably mad at her for this, And so he gives her away in marriage to one of the 30 groomsmen that was assigned to Samson, which is an awesome idea. And so Samson comes back from his killing spree, and he goes to the dad, and he's like, hey, let me see my girl. And the dad's like, actually, she's married to someone else now. But, hey, I've got this younger daughter here. You should check her out. And he's like, no, he's upset about it. And so Samson's like, I'm going to take revenge on the Philistines for this. And it begins this cycle of revenge. He burns a ton of Philistine crops. The Philistine men find out that it was Samson who did it. And they do exactly what they threatened Karen. In revenge on Samson, they burn down Karen's house with her father and everyone she loves and her family inside the house. They get burned alive, and Karen is killed. And so and this cycle of revenge continues. Samson versus the Philistines versus Samson versus the Philistines, and back and forth. And this is the tragedy and the train wreck that is the story with Karen. And so what we see in this part of the story is our second quality that we should look for in a wife. Because Karen, when she was threatened with her life and with the life of everyone she loves, responded with fear. And we saw how that worked out. But, so the quality that I would look for in a wife is that she is guided by faith, not fear. She's guided by faith, not fear. If Karen had been guided by faith or maybe a little bit of thoughtfulness, she would have said, my husband is the Hulk, so I'll let you guys deal with that if you try to come after us. But she didn't say that, and she didn't turn to God either. She didn't say, God, would you help me with this? These guys are threatening to harm my family. What should I do? Instead, she gut reacted with fear, and she thought she could take care of the situation herself, and it ended tragically in her death and the death of her father and his entire household. And so when it comes to the woman that you're interested in dating, that you think may make a potential wife, where is her identity rooted? Is it rooted in God? Is it rooted in Christ? Or is it rooted in something of this world that leads her to be driven by fear? How can you tell that she might be guided by fear? Well, one thing is she desperate for a relationship. Do you see her bouncing from one relationship to the next with no time in between? It's like a rebound relationship showing that she needs to be with someone. She's finding her identity in who she's with. Or do you see her constantly comparing herself to other women? Does she criticize every woman that you interact with? Or does she criticize other girls to you or behind their backs? Or what are her friendships like with other girls? Does she not make friends with other girls? Is she driven by the fear that comes with comparison, with crippling comparison? Or is she using her body to get to you? Is she using her body as the way to attract you? And ladies, this is not a good idea, because here's a reality, a sad reality. But if you win him with your body, and that's what's keeping him with you, then someday you'll lose him to someone else's body. Because the reality is that, and it may not be immediately, right? But the reality is we're all aging, we're all growing up, gravity is winning, and we're all getting uglier, all right? It's just happening. That's what happens. I'm 33, I can say that. We're all getting uglier. So yeah, it may not happen in the first 2 years, 3 years, but if you're winning him with your body and you're keeping him with your body, then you'll lose him with your body. And so that's not how you want to win and keep a man. And so, gentlemen, if she is trying to win you over with her body, then she is driven by fear, not by faith. But signs that she may be guided by faith is she confident, not just in her body, but in who she is, in who she is in Jesus, and who he says she is, and the value that he gives to her. Does she encourage and build up her friends? Does she turn to God when things aren't going her way? Whenever she has a hard decision? Whenever she's struggling with anxiety? Or whenever she's struggling with sin? Does she turn to God in those moments? Those are signs that she's guided by faith. And that's the second quality that I would look for in a wife. So we'll pick up another chapter in Samson's story when Samson, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happened since the train wreck that was his relationship with Karen. But we pick up and Samson has fallen in love with another Philistine woman, and her name is, "Hey there, Delilah, what's it like in Philistine City?" It's Delilah. And if you know Samson's story, she's a pretty famous character here for her connivingness. And so Samson's in a relationship with this Philistine woman named Delilah. Now, he's abandoned all ideas of marriage, and it's apparent from the text that they are not married, and yet they are sleeping together, possibly cohabitating at this point in time. So he is definitely not living according to God's will for his sexual purity. And so knowing that Delilah's in this relationship with Samson, the Philistine men go to Delilah and they say, "Hey, Delilah, we'll offer you this boatload of money, ridiculous sum of money, if you can find out the secret to Samson's strength." They're like, "This dude is wrecking us and there's nothing we can do about it. But if you can figure out the secret to his strength so that we can take him out, we'll pay you a huge amount of money." And Delilah, she a gold digger. So she's like, "I'll take it. I'm in." And so she's like, "I'll find out the secret to his strength." Now, in my opinion, her way of approaching Samson wasn't very tactful, because she walks up to him and goes, "Hey, what's the secret to your strength? And how could I tie you down?" I don't know. I feel like some alarms would go off in my head at that point if I was Samson. Now, to his credit, he didn't tell her the truth. He didn't give her the real answer to the question. He told her that, "Hey, well, if you get this certain type of cord," now some Bible translations call it a bowstring, but this translation calls it a thong. So we're going to say thong. And he says, "If you get this certain type of thong and you tie me up, then I'll have the strength of any other man, and it'll lose all of my strength." And she's like, "Okay." And so Samson takes a nap, and she gets these thongs and she ties him up. And then she wakes him up. She's like, "Samson, the Philistines here to get you." And he wakes up and he breaks these thongs and he's got all of his strength and he's ready to fight and he didn't lose any of his strength. And so Delilah's like, you lied to me. You didn't tell me the truth because you still have your strength. Where really does your strength come from? And what really would I have to do to tie you down? Your alarm should really be going off at this point, guys. Like, Sampson should say, I think we're through. I think this has been a nice relationship, but we're done. He should break up with her at this point. But he keeps this little charade going, and he's like, yeah, I was just messing with you. But if you get this certain type of rope and you tie me down, all my strength will be gone. I'll be like any other man. And so Samson goes to sleep again. He takes a nap. He's a real big napper. And so Delilah ties him up with this certain kind of rope, and she does it again. Samson, Samson, the Philistines are here to get you. And he wakes up, and he breaks the ropes like they're made of string. And she's like, you lied to me again. Your strength is still here. What the heck, bro? You know? And she's like, okay, tell me this time, where does your strength come from? And he's like, all right, so if you tie my hair into this loom and you weave it into this fabric and then you like pin it down, I'll lose all my strength and I'll be just like any other man. And she's like, okay. So he naps again, of course. It's like on cue. He's like, let me lie down and go to sleep right next to this loom so that you can tie my hair into it. But so he goes to sleep. She ties his hair in a loom and the same thing happens. Samson, Samson, the Philistines are here. And he wakes up. He gets up, takes the whole machine with him, right? And he hasn't lost his strength. And so she's like, she pulls the same card Karen pulled. She's like, you say you love me, and you won't even tell me the secret to your strength. And Samson finally gives in. It actually says, funny enough, it says she nags him to death. So Samson, having enough of the nagging, is like, okay, I'll tell you the real story this time. I'll tell you the truth. And he says, I'm a Nazirite. My hair's never been cut before. If you shave my head, I will lose all my strength. I'll be just like any other man. And for whatever reason, Delilah knows it's the truth this time. And so on cue, Samson takes a nap, big napper. And she calls the Philistine men. She's like, guys, come here. I got him this time. And so she calls them there, and she's like, I don't know, she must be stroking his hair or something. For whatever reason, he doesn't feel it when they shave his hair off, and all his strength is drained. And she goes, Samson, Samson, the Philistines are here to get you. And he wakes up and he's like, I'm going to wreck him. But his strength has left him. God took his strength away because he broke all 3 of his Nazirite vows at this point. And so the Philistines are able to take him captive, and they gouge his eyes out, make him their prisoner, and they take him, and he's sentenced to grinding corn in the prison, pushing a heavy, heavy millstone around in circles, blind for the foreseeable future. Thank you, Delilah. And so, in Delilah's story with Samson, we see the third quality that we're looking for in a wife, and that is this, that she doesn't see you as a means to an end. She doesn't see you as a way to get what she wants. Delilah obviously wasn't working for Samson's good, and he should have seen it, but for whatever reason, whatever love-drunk spell she had over him, he didn't see it. He didn't guard his own heart. He didn't ask himself, does she really want what's best for me? And so Delilah was able to manipulate Samson to get her goal, which was this huge sum of cash that had been offered to her by the Philistine men. Now, the Bible tells us that marriage is a relationship of sacrifice and submission. Sacrifice and submission. Between the man and the woman, there is mutual sacrifice and submission. Putting the needs of the other above your own needs. And so we're looking for a wife who doesn't see you as a means to an end, as a way to get what she wants. But in a dating relationship, you're not called to this idea of sacrifice and submission to one another because you haven't committed to each other in a marriage relationship yet. So how are you supposed to find out if she's going to sacrifice and submit for you? And I would go to, well, how can you tell that she's treating people and things in her life as a means to an end right now? How does she treat people who she can't get anything in return from? Is she kind to the servers at the restaurant? How does she treat the janitors in that building on campus? How does she treat people who can't give her anything in return? Or is she putting others' needs first, or does she try to make every situation work so that she gets what she wants out of it? Is she manipulative to get what she wants? Going back to Karen, you don't even love me. You don't even trust me, even though I'm trying to get this out of you so I can betray your trust. Is she manipulative to get what she wants? But what are signs then that she doesn't see you as a means to an end, that she's not looking to you to meet some desperate need? One, she doesn't need a relationship. She's not desperate to have you in her life to meet that need of not being alone. Why? Because she doesn't need a man to meet her needs, because her needs have been met by Jesus. She knows who she is. She knows where her identity lies in Jesus, and her needs, her emotional needs, have been met by Jesus. Her spiritual needs have been met by Jesus. And then, of course, when you look at the way she interacts with people in her life, her friends, with people who can't give her anything in return, with her family, does she put the needs of others above her own needs and wants? Does she put the needs of others above her own wants and needs? If so, that's a sign. That's a sign that she might be the type of woman who's going to sacrifice and submit for you in marriage, and you're called to do the same in marriage for her. And so, through Samson's story so far, we've seen that three qualities we're looking for in a wife. One, that she's a follower of Jesus. That is, if you take one thing out of my message tonight, that is the single and most important quality that you're looking for in a wife, that she is a follower of Jesus. She has a heart submitted to him. And two, that she's guided by faith, not by fear. And third, that she doesn't just see you as a means to an end, as a way to get over loneliness, but that her identity is found in Christ. And so that's not the end of Samson's story. In fact, the next part, as we wrap up, the end of his story is a story of redemption. Despite this train wreck after train wreck in relationships and disobedience after disobedience, here's what we see. Here's how Samson's story comes to an end. He's a slave to the Philistines. His eyes have been gouged out. He's lost his strength. He's sentenced to hard physical labor for the rest of his life. But the Philistines have this big festival where they're celebrating one of their gods. And so they all gather, a bunch of the Philistine leaders and people gather in this temple to celebrate this festival. And they're like, ooh, I've got a good idea. Let's bring out our enemy, Samson, who's our slave. Let's ridicule him. That'll be the entertainment for the night. And so Samson is brought out to the party so that he can be ridiculed, laughed at, belittled. And so he's brought out there, and he asks, he's got no eyesight, he's got no strength, he's been humbled thoroughly. And he asks one of the people guiding him, he's like, will you put me by these two big pillars that are holding up this temple so that I can lean against him? He's got something of his own in mind here. And what follows is a little bit weird, it's a little bit out of our culture, it's a little bit different for us to follow. But there's a couple of things that are truly incredible about what happens next. And so what Samson does is he's recognized that he's lost everything that he thought he was. And for the very first time in this story, we see him pray to God. And he asks God, would you restore my strength one more time? Would you give me back what I lost, what you took away when I broke my vows to you? Would you restore my strength? And his reasoning is what may be a little bit hard for us to follow, but it's so that I can push these columns down and bring this temple down and destroy the leaders of the Philistines. And we don't look nowadays, because Jesus came and died on the cross, and that he extended salvation, the offer of salvation to everyone. We don't look at the enemies of God, the people who aren't following God in this way anymore. We approach them. We want them to know Jesus' love for them. We want them to be a part of his kingdom. But at the time, the Philistines were the enemies of God and the enemy of his nation, his people, Israel. And so Samson asked, God, would you restore my strength so that I can destroy the leaders of this nation and bring salvation to my people? He humbles himself for the first time. And in response to Samson, in his weakness, God responds. He restores Samson's strength. He pushes the pillars down, and the temple comes down. It comes down on top of him and all of these Philistine leaders. And it wraps his story up by saying that Samson did more in his death for his nation than he did in his life. It's a strange ending to a story, but I think it's still a story of redemption. How do we go back to Judges? How do we go back to the Old Testament and this time and place and culture that's so different from our own and pull out principles that can tell us what we're looking for in a wife or what we're looking for in a significant other? I think it's because the Bible, from beginning to end, is a story of redemption. It's the story of God's redemption of his creation, humankind, restoring their relationship to him. The Bible and this story, this train wreck, weird, backwards, upside down story of Samson is the story of God's redemption of Samson. And all throughout the Bible, it's the story of our redemption. It's the story of my redemption. And it's the story of your redemption. And the reason I say that is, I don't know if you're a woman in the crowd tonight and you heard some of this, maybe you comparing yourself to that and you feel like, man, I don't measure up. Man, he called me out. Man, that hurt my feelings. That offended me. And I hope that doesn't take you to a dark place. I hope that doesn't take you to a place of anger or resentment, especially towards God, because here's the truth. Is that if that is you, if you haven't been following Jesus, if you've been running from him, if you've been guided by fear instead of faith, if you've been looking to men as a means to an end, that doesn't have to be the end of your story, and that doesn't define who you are, because God is a God of redemption, and that he can bring change in your life, and he can redeem your story. Same goes for you, men. We see this in Samson. He lived in disobedience after disobedience, selfishness after pride, after rebelliousness, thinking that he had it all. And at the end, God redeemed his story. I just got married 5 months ago to Gabby, and our marriage has been amazing so far. And I think that, a lot of people in their 20s, in their early 20s, are thinking, man, I'm getting older. I'm losing my opportunity to be in a relationship. And then you hear this and you're like, I don't measure up. Ryan's up there saying that I'm not ready to be a wife. I can't be a wife because of my past or because of the way that I've been living. But I know Gabby's story, and when she was in her early 20s, there was a time when she wasn't following after Jesus. There was a time when she was guided by fear over faith. And there was a time when she was looking to different men to meet her needs rather than looking to Jesus to meet her needs. And we got married in our 30s. And we can tell you that in her story and in mine as well, I was running from God. I was living in sin and hypocrisy. But God redeemed both of our stories. It means that our past doesn't define us. It means that he is in the business of redemption. And because of what he did, what Jesus did on the cross, when he came and gave his life for you and for me, he can redeem your past. He can redeem your story. And if that's something you're struggling with tonight, if you know that there's something in your past that you're holding on to and you don't know if God can forgive you for that, if he can redeem that, go and ask Gabby about it. Go and ask Taylor and Shannon were up here. They'll tell you how God has redeemed their story, ladies. Or guys, come and find me. I'll tell you how God's redeemed my story and how he can redeem yours as well. So let's trust him in that. Let's see his sacrifice on the cross. Let's see that he went and paid the ultimate price for us so that our past wouldn't define us. And if we don't measure up, that he can change us and he can lead us and he can form us into someone, into who he's calling us to be. Let me pray that he does. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this night. Thank you for this place. Thank you for this time to be together in your presence and to seek after you, to learn from your word, Lord. And we thank you for Samson's story and for this wild story of so many things that don't make sense to us or are just so strange, but that in the midst of it, you are working and that you reveal to us truths and things that we need to know as we move towards marriage, Lord. I thank you that you've taught us through this. And I pray for everybody who feels like, man, I'm not meeting the mark. I'm not measuring up, Lord. I pray that we would just turn to you in this, that we would ask you for help, that we would ask you to change our hearts, that we would ask you to redeem our story just like you did for Samson and just like you have done throughout history. Lord, I pray that you would do that in people's hearts tonight. We pray this in your name.